The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is presented by Vans. Season 5 of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast was sponsored by Wired Snowboards, Anon Optics, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Crow's Nest Barber Shops, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. Support for the show also came from Cypress, Grouse, and Seymour, the 3 local mountains here in Vancouver. All the main sponsors contributed to the Stoke.org fundraiser raffle we're doing right now. We've got a Wired Snowboard. We've got a $200 gift certificate for Boardroom. We've got Anon goggles, a Tribute hoodie, and a Crow's Nest gift pack. Plus, we've received prizes from several more companies and rad people. Dano Pendergrass has donated a print of Russell Winfield, which is at Russell's place. Being signed by both Dano and Russell makes it priceless. That's going to be a nice one to win. So is the painting by Jamie Lynn, which is Beltane, a significant piece painted at the side of an undisclosed Canadian lake up in the Kootenays. Intuition Liners have donated a pair of custom-fit heat molding liners, which will change somebody's life. Brad Hepner got one of his shots of Chris Duffy signed during a recent visit to the Duffy family in Kamloops. Duff's riding a wired board these days, by the way, and still ripping hard. DeKine's putting something together, and Abnormal Skateboards showed up yesterday, and they look amazing. They've given us some t-shirts and Canadian-made skateboards. The boards look great. I'm skating a deck from the factory that builds Abnormal Skateboards, and it's amazing. And I'm proud to announce, we reached my goal of over $2,000. That means Vans has matched the first $2,000, and we're going to be donating more than $4,000 to Stoke.org. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys absolutely rule. You could still grab a ticket last minute by sending a $10 e-transfer or PayPal payment to fnradpodcast@hotmail.com. There's no limit to how many tickets you can buy. This is episode 7 of the first season of Russell Winfield's The Plug Podcast. Russell's guest is Stan LeVeille, who worked at Yo Beat before joining Snowboarder, and the entertaining conversation covers a lot of ground. Russell will be doing seasons that are 8 episodes long, which means the next episode will be an anchor episode of his first season. I'm really stoked on how well The Plug's been received by the snowboard community. And now here's The Plug Podcast with Russell Winfield, episode 7. Let's listen together.
My name is Russell Winfield, and welcome to The Plug Podcast, presented by Fat Tire Beer. This week, we're doing something a little different. We are in the home office, Snowboarder magazine, and I am interviewing Stan, which might be a first for him to be on that side instead of this side. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Russell. Honored to be on your podcast. Been listening to it.
Thank you.
Insightful, exciting, good guests. And I can see that we're expanding the message to just a discussion about everything.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Now
that you've got me on, I'm assuming we're not.
Yeah, my podcast wasn't ever. It's not like a black centralized thing. It's just people. Given the landscape at the time of inception, that was something that needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to have people of color because, there's going to be everybody.
Yeah.
But I think to be the first non-black, which you are, is pretty awesome.
Well, we had Spencer in the mix, who's half First Nations.
She's First Nation. So you're
incredible story. But, yeah, I am undeniably the whitest guest that you've had so far.
Yes, absolutely. I think what my podcast is about is telling stories to educate people on a multitude of different things, from whether it be someone like you who was a substitute teacher and now is, a journalistic mogul amongst men in the action sports industry. And your rise hasn't been meteoric, but it's been steady.
A steady burn, yeah.
A steady, and it's been
kind of an STD, just a steady burn and kind of annoying. And people are like, are we still dealing with this? Really? 10 years later, and we still have.
Penicillin would take care of this.
Yeah,
crap.
It's not. No, totally. I mean, I also feel like we didn't get in. I haven't talked much about being a substitute teacher, but that's true. Right after college, I was a substitute teacher, which is a trip. And teaching is crazy. My mom's a teacher.
Oh, okay.
So, and what's funny is my dad's a writer. So now we've checked both the boxes off now, but yeah, substitute teacher. I thought maybe teaching would be I actually didn't know if I think teaching was always my backup plan. I could be a teacher, I thought. Now it's not my backup plan anymore, but I don't have one anymore.
There's too many of you out on the internet that need to be a teacher.
Yeah.
No.
But I did get called out. I remember I wrote an article about weed for YoBeat, and the first comment on the article was, "This guy was my substitute teacher," which I was like, damn. And this is, of course, was before Massachusetts legalized weed. It was a little bit.
Yeah, we used to smoke hella reefer. And this kid's like, "Are you the guy who was my substitute teacher?" You're like, "Who, me? No. Wrong guy."
I also feel like if anyone's listening to this and not watching, we do need to point out that we're holding stick mics like Bob Barkers out here.
Yes. Actually, I can be who's the black one? The new guy who's doing
Wayne Brady?
Yes.
Yeah. Great host. Whose line is it anyway? Great show. Sorry, not that we need to have that conversation right now.
that was like that show always struck me as like all them dudes probably hung out, like they were probably friends.
Yeah.
Like outside of that, and they were either drinking one night or smoking hella reefer, and we're like, you know what? We're gonna have like this sketch show, and it's going to be hilarious. We're just going to do the dumbest stuff. And they're like, yeah.
Dude, those guys are legends. I mean, yeah. I think it's that's funny because I do comedy as well, but that is like full-on sketch comedy. It's like improv. You ever go to like improv shows?
I don't, but
they're just like that. And I didn't realize that was like a culture or a thing. And that show, I think, introduced it to a lot of people. But it's kind of like an improv show that was popular on TV.
Yeah.
Wayne Brady being an incredible
improv guy.
Improv guy, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about. So you grew up in Massachusetts.
I grew up in the Berkshires, which literally it blew my mind when you told me that you went to Berkshire School.
Yeah,
I was completely mind blown by this information. That's 10 minutes away from my house.
So were you a Sheffield or were you a Great Barrington?
I was Great Barrington.
Yeah,
and there's one handrail that was at Berkshire School that we definitely hit or tried to in high school and got kicked out.
Right in front of the main building, right down.
Yeah, exactly. So that's, Western Mass, when you told me that, my mind exploded. Because I met you in Oregon.
Yeah.
I met you at the Dirksen Derby with Terrier for the first time, and we made a video.
Yep.
And it's crazy to think that I didn't know that about you until you brought it up to me last year.
You said you had something where you were talking about, when I grew up in Great Barrington, and I was like, what? Wait.
Yeah.
I knew you were from Mass, but it's like most of they're from like the other side.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a side of Massachusetts a lot of people don't know exists. Like when you say I'm from Western Mass, they're like Springfield, and you're like, keep going deep into the woods.
Like we're talking west.
Yeah. So I grew up in the Berkshires, Western Mass, beautiful, kind of picturesque.
Definitely a
place
to be during the fall.
Did you ride? Did you ride yet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you ride Butternut?
Yeah, we rode Butternut. Greg Race was a Butternut local.
Yeah.
Weird dude.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know them.
You don't know Greg Race?
No.
He was like the original Massachusetts snowboard contest.
Oh wow.
But he was a racer, and his name was Greg Race.
That's dope.
I mean, it's almost like a Saturday Night Live thing.
Greg Race.
Greg Race.
Heard it with another gold. Yeah. Okay.
Where were we?
Butternut. So
yes.
You rode Butternut. That
I did.
I can't even of all the list of there's not a long list of greats that I would say kind of like
have been to Butternut.
But it's like Lucas Magoon, Scott Stevens. I never would have known you were on that list.
Funny Butternut story. So I started snowboarding 5th grade, but I was still playing a bunch of ice hockey and all that. We had a school trip probably in 9th grade, 10th grade. Like, you know how you have school ski trips?
Sure.
maybe 10th grade, 9th or 10th grade, I can't remember. And I snowboarded, and all my friends were skiing, and it was at Butternut. And there was like this mogul run, and you could like squeeze in there and then boom, do a jump, because back then we didn't have parks, you know. It was like, there was nothing. So a mogul was a perfect jump. So I learned backside 360s out of the mogul field at Butternut.
Dude, as someone who is like, my dad also historian of the area. He's like a local historian, loves Great Barrington. And it's a part of my personality that I didn't know existed, but I also nerd out on that shit. So for you to tell me that and for you to have that connection to Butternut I actually can't even express how like crazy I think that is and how like incredible that is.
It's a lot of people, funny enough, don't believe I'm an East Coaster.
Yeah. I mean, I know it. You know, the thing is, East Coasters know each other, I think. It's funny, I wouldn't have guessed because I met you on the West Coast, but anyone that I can talk as much shit to as I can with you I should know. So I should have probably known.
Should have figured it out by now.
Yeah. East Coast. I think I did. I think I enjoyed the East Coast. I ended up living in Portland forever, and then I moved back to the East Coast, to Vermont for a little while.
You did?
Yeah.
How did that go? You're here, so.
Yeah, it was fine. I was dating someone, and we ended up back east, and it was totally the right decision for that time. And it was actually really great to reconnect with the fam, and actually reconnect with the East Coast was important.
Yeah,
because you go to the West Coast, and everyone is such a passive-aggressive little twerp, you know? And I remember the first time I went back to the East Coast, I was in a bagel shop, and I was, like, kind of standing in this woman's way.
Say, get out of the way.
She's like, get the fuck out of my way. That's what she said. And I was like, it turned and was, like, got in my Portland voice. It was like, I'm so sorry. And then she was still being a bitch, and I was like, oh, my, I actually miss this. You know, I miss... So it was a good move for re-solidifying my cynicism in life. I needed that.
Yeah.
Because now I live in SoCal and I'm an alien here because everyone is like says I'm the most. Everyone says I'm negative. I'm too negative. I'm too cynical. I think it's an East Coast thing.
Yeah. So
everything is spread out weird here. You got to drive everywhere. That's what I'm mad about. You can't just like pull up on the bike to the coffee. You're all in a suburb and you got to find this thing. It drives me nuts. Yeah. So I'm fitting in slowly. You know, what I think the key is in SoCal is you actually just have to look up more because it is a beautiful tropical paradise. But sometimes I'm looking, people come here to work as well. And so you put your head down.
And you work.
Which is in other East. Maybe that's actually just the East Coaster in me. Because there's a lot of people that leave to go surf all day too. Yeah. But I don't surf. That's actually the key to my success here in SoCal.
Stand, don't surf. Good for you. Let's talk, what I don't know. Is Yo Beat was kind of your journalistic cotillion, so to speak, and totally. I don't even know if is that even a thing anymore.
Yo Beat? I don't think so. I think that if Jared owns some part of it, which is Brooks X, the Instagram still exists. I don't know if they post. They sold the trademark to like I believe like a South Korean outerwear company dude, there's like straight up like you can buy windbreakers and shit that say Yo Beat. Like they're like the clothing line still exists, which is crazy to me.
That is such an Asian action sports maneuver.
Yeah, I mean I think so. Basically, short answer, Yo Beat might still be a thing in Korea. It is not in America. And that was, Yo Beat. It's interesting. Yo Beat was a lot of things, and Yo Beat was really cool. And Yo Beat was run and created by a woman, which I think is rare, and it takes a lot of power to make that happen. And I always respected Brooke for her ability to do that. It also was kind of this heyday of like they dug up a lot of things. Like let's talk Yagoons, I feel like Yo Beat was the one with his finger on the pulse, figuring out that the early adopter to the Yagoons. I can remember even like if you want to talk fucking Dylan Ojo, it was a trip. I was like, the first big project I think that I worked on there was a movie called Yo America, and it was like all user submitted footage, like crews submitted footage, and we edited together a movie called Yo America. And Dylan's crew, now Amin at the time, like had submitted all their shit, and Dylan has like the opening. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. It's like, and it's still like hammers. Like, and Dylan opens the whole movie up, and I remember we gave him Rookie of the Year that year, and so Yo Beat was cool. Like in terms of they were like on it in terms of like truly discussing sort of the up and comers and classically making fun of the Titans.
Yeah, as you should.
Yeah.
That relationship between you and Yo Beat dissolved. Was that? I know for me, a lot of the times when relationships or professional relationships dissolve, there's money involved, and there's like a sort of like respect. Was that kind of what it was?
It was money and it was respect for sure. that drove me away. I mean, here's the thing. I was grateful that, and when I started at Yo Beat, I feel like Brooke and I were relatively on the same page. And I think that in terms of what we wanted to create and what we were both willing to do to work together to make those things happen. I think the more that I got into the industry, a couple things happened. The more that I hung out. One, I got sick of feeling like there was a target on my back at all times because I worked for Yo Beat, and Yo Beat was like known as being hated. So like if I wanted to get an interview with a rider, they would say no. A lot of times they would say no. Like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I'm not interested. And I always felt like if it was Snowboarder Mag or if it was Trans World asking these people, it would have been a yes. And I always felt like I was having to work against the reputation, the negative side of the reputation that had been garnered at Yo Beat due to not only Brooke, but Nick Lipton and everyone. And they had their fun doing it, but it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So I would go on to like kind of make my own shit. And in a lot of ways, like, yeah, I became a solo, like, I didn't like, the truth of the matter is it got to a point where I didn't actually like to make things with Brooke and Jared around anymore because I didn't like them interjecting about what I should do while I was doing it. Like, picture the first couple episodes of Hate Line, like Brooke's off camera, like, no, don't say that. And I couldn't handle it anymore. So I started making it by myself. And the disconnect between Brooke and I just started to grow in a lot of ways. And it got to a point where she had her own life shit going on. She was trying to figure out her own life and relationship and her shit, which I also trip on now because when I started at Yo Beat, she was, I think, like 33.
Yeah. And
I'm 31 now. And so, like, to me, she seemed like a full-on adult, and I was, like, fresh out of college. And now I look at it, and I'm like, damn, she was dealing with, like, a lot of heavy shit at a pretty young age. Like, I'm young, and if I was, like, dealing with a business that I had started that was, like, potentially folding and dealing with a relationship that wasn't working, that was tied into this business, shit, like, I can't really imagine. So, like, I have to give a little leeway there, but the undeniable fact is they didn't think that I was worth what they were paying me. And they already
should have paid you more.
Yeah, and they already weren't paying me enough. So I remember one day, like, they called me and told me they had to cut my budget, and it was just done. And I was bummed. Like, I think I don't know if I cried. I might have. It was totally like a breakup. Like, we had like I had been working with them for years and was content for quite some time. And I couldn't even really imagine myself in the industry. And in a lot of ways, I felt like it was what validated me. So there was a lot that went into it, but it was ultimately like they were offering to pay me a laughable amount. They wouldn't even like put me on their employment. So I was still like, I was an independent contractor. I didn't know shit about taxes. Like I was getting paid under the table. Tax time comes. I owe like $4,000. I'm already not making any money.
You're
and
like,
I'm like,
wait,
what? Yeah. So, I mean, that whole experience was just such such a learning experience, and I literally wouldn't be sitting here without all of the good and the bad that came with it. But yeah, it effectively came down to money and respect, which was, we had this conversation, which was like, they were like, we want to take Yo Beat in a different direction. Basically, we don't think we need you. Is pretty much what they told me, and I was like, well,
let me tell you something, Stan. You were Yo Beat
for the end.
once your ball started rolling, like I didn't do anything else on that site. Was like, it was so like old feeling for like I was like, okay, Brooke's got this new guy and he's funny and he's snarky and all right, let's go.
But she immediately tried to replace me when I left too, with like 4 other people like that were just like who she. Because here's the thing, Brooke is great at providing people who are hungry with opportunities.
Of course, because that's how she gets paid.
Totally. But I don't think she realized or ever really appreciated how much I was really willing to hang on and keep fighting, because I watched her do it, like try and plug the hole as soon as I left. Like, oh, here's another kid who will just like do whatever. And like I watched like 4 drop like flies in 3 months. Like, I'm not fucking doing this. And I like laughed. I was like, yeah, I did this for years.
Yeah.
But by the time I did leave, I was a force to be, I was.
You were the guy.
Yeah.
You'd kind of started, like you definitely carved out your own niche, which we're now in, kind of.
Yeah.
This was what you did in snowboarding.
Yeah.
This is yours. But
what is?
Like the whole, the interview, the video thing, that's, talking on your face, on camera, talking shit.
That's
talking with people. That was you. Nobody
totally
did it. Like Todd Richards kind of Todd doesn't do it. Todd,
no. I mean, Todd does do it. I love Todd. He's been an inspiration. I mean, and Salema, of course, was
but it's a different thing.
The person that I saw doing it. But in terms of being like a kind of a like little, this is the thing. Like, and we talked about it on the bomb hole. Is like I'm kind of an entertainer. That's kind of like what I do, and so and that's what I've always been doing. Like I was like in the plays in high school, and I was like like I was always doing this kind of shit. So I think that was just a natural, and I wanted to be better than everyone. And honestly, I think about this too. Like I was the only one doing it, and I took pride in that. But I would be lying if there wasn't a part in the back of my head that was
somebody else to do it.
No, well, that's what I would tell people to make me sound cool and strong. But I was scared that someone was going to come and do it better than me, because like. And maybe it was imposter syndrome, or maybe I don't know what it was. But like when I was in the cut, I was like, dude, somebody could just come along and do this better than me. Like, and then it didn't happen. But I was
the
scared
balls to do it, bud.
Yeah.
So how long? So you're reeling. You're like, I'm out of work. I don't know. Not that I was getting paid, but at least I was getting something.
Yeah.
Was that when you moved back to Vermont?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's when I moved back. And that's when
You did a lot of the stand-up stuff I saw.
That's when I absolutely dove into stand-up, because I got to a point, I'll never forget this either, like our relationship was getting rocky. Like Brooks and I's relationship was getting pretty rocky, and we had switched from being on a salary to pay per piece. And I'll never forget this. It was the day of the rat race that Brooke had a big falling out with High Cascade that day. Ended up having I don't remember what happened, but like
she was doing a lot of dumb stuff.
Yeah, she got like kicked out of High Cascade or something.
Yeah, because they didn't want her to drink. Like it was
I don't know
something.
what it was, but she was like, "Hey, we're going to the rat race." Like and I had been like her right hand man for years at this point, and I was like, "I'm not going." She was like, "What do you mean?" I had an audition for a talent agency in Portland that day. And I was like, dude, like, you are literally leaving me out to dry. Like, I got to go figure out how I'm going to make this work. Like, and that nothing came of that audition at all. Like, I went, and I think the guy, like, roasted me. He was just like, what's up with your nose? Like, he was just like, nah, dude, you're not it. And I remember being like, shit, like, and I just kind of walked out of there and was like, well, damn. So, yeah, I moved back to Mass. And, well, here's the thing. I had been trying to shop the show to other people.
Yeah.
To Snowboard Mag, to Snowboarder Mag. I also got offered. I always trip on this one. I got offered a job to be the associate editor of Snowboard Mag, not really? Snowboarder, but Snowboard in Colorado.
Yeah.
And to me, the associate editor is like the gear writer.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I didn't just spend 4 years building this fucking name sake to just go be a gear writer for Snowboard Mag. So I turned the job down To which, honestly, until I got hired at Snowboarder, I think I questioned that decision monthly.
You're like,
should I have done that?
Gear,
should I have done that? Should I have done that? But yeah, so I went back east. I started doing a bunch more stand-up. I started trying to honestly make just comedy videos, which is like,
it's gotta be tough.
It's tough because I had spent years starting at the bottom, and then I was in a place of like middle. I was like middle snowboard pack core, in the middle of the industry, like in the thick of it. And when I started doing comedy, just back to ground zero at an even more vast ground zero. Like comedy is big, and so when you're at the bottom, you're at the bottom. Nowhere, and so I remember, I was trying to make comedy videos and like getting frustrated because I'd put this shit online and like I'd get like 500 views or like 300 views, and you got to keep going because like Hateline wasn't nailing it from the beginning, like it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah. But yeah, I just remember being like that was really hard of a transition, but I started making comedy. I helped Aki Helgeson make a movie in Iceland. That was like the one project
I remember
that held, like, literally, like, kept my claws in it. Like, and that was like in a big part who saved me in that time was Diggles, Ryan Scardigley, who like is like the TM marketing guy, do everything at Battalion Lobster. And basically, like, had that guy not just been like, no, we like him and we're going to bring him to Europe, because they were bringing me on the premiere tours to MC.
I was wondering what was up with all that.
So that was just Diggy, like, being like, this kid is good and we like him and he was funny and we're going to bring him along. And that was fucking huge because that validated me in a lot of ways. I'm in Europe, like, and
that's a huge, like, as a snowboarder, like, that's a huge American snowboarder. It's probably like being a rock and roller back in the day in England, like your first U.S. tour, that lets you know something. You're like, okay.
It was that was the closest thing to that kind of experience that I've ever had. And what's interesting about that, though, too, is like when I was there, I definitely had this like kind of imposter syndrome where I was like, man, I can't believe they're paying me to be here to do this, just to talk on stage. And then you realize, eventually I realized, like, oh, this is my skill, though. Like, this seems easy to me because this is something I'm good at. And I'm over here, like, stressing that Monster's paying me a couple $1,000s because I'm, like, feeling like a fake. And then I realized, oh, like,
this is what I'm good at.
Yeah, you can't stick anyone on that stage and have them command the crowd and have them be attentive. And that's when I realized, like, oh, shit, okay. So, yeah, that's when I started doing that. And then I made Last Resort because I was starting to get pissed off at Angry Snowboarder and all these other people trying to make whack versions of my show. And I eventually was like, because I was taking it personally, like almost like you and I have talked about, like where it was like snowboarding owes me, or like I was almost like feeling like that, where I was like almost like I've done so much and I've been working my ass off for no money for 5 years and nobody gives a shit and blah blah blah. And the turning point was just me realizing, like, so fucking what? Like, no one's just gonna start paying you now. So I just started making Last Resort just because I needed to, like, in the way that like art is like the artist needs to like feel okay. Like in a lot of ways, like making those videos was what I needed to do to feel okay. And maybe that's why people like them, because you can sense that. I don't know.
No, they liked them because they were good, bud. They were where you went right and where Yobi went wrong is you grew from your hate line.
Yeah.
Which was Last Resort. Yobi and Brooke was so afraid of you, I believe, that she retreated like it was a forest fire.
Yeah.
Back into something old. And you can't. Once you show somebody, you know, it's not like Jordans where you can always go back to the old ones and they're cool. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole different thing. You got to keep progressing.
Yeah. Well, I also think, I mean, I had to do a lot of learning. And I actually also look back, while I do think that Hateline is like arguably funnier than any Last Resort that's ever come out, because I was so
hunger. Yeah,
and I was so bad at editing still that it looks hilariously bad. That it's like looks like we did that on purpose, or I did that on purpose. Because that's the other thing. When I say we, I always do this. I'm like, when we make Last Resort or when we do this, but it's literally just me.
Yeah.
Like, but what I had to do was actually learn, like, I'm embarrassed about some of the shit that I used to say on Hateline, and I wasn't, for me to act like I was always, like, progressively having the right conversations in snowboarding is just not the case. And that's like, that came from partners, from people I dated that, people I trust that just made me be like, dude, you can't talk about women in snowboarding like that. You can't sexualize them. You can't like object. You're part of the problem if you do that. And I would say that's a big difference between Hate Line and Last Resort, and what happened in that space was that I just like I think I grew up a little bit and figured out that people were actually listening to the shit I was saying, and that I was maybe promoting stuff that I personally might know better, but like someone else listening might not. So,
yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. It's my show, obviously. Has a social dynamic to it, and sexualizing women, and the minority thing, and all of it. Like in the last, let's say, 5 years, I feel has had a huge light shined on all of it, but yet I feel like it's moving backwards.
I can't tell if it's moving backwards. I don't know if it's moving backwards or it is more visibly, it's more possible to view than ever the people who have shitty viewpoints. Whereas, like, I think that a lot of people are making strides in a positive direction.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people are more visible than ever before. So we get a chance to hear what some of these, maybe isolated or communities that I never would have interacted with. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, I get to see, like, what they're... Because we walk through our lives thinking, we have our own understanding of what life is and who we interact with, and I get to thinking the world is a certain way based on the interactions that I have with people, and then you start to realize, like, holy shit, like the whole, this is why I subscribed actually to Donald Trump's email list.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I want to know. I want to know what they're saying. I want to. And it's crazy. Let me tell you, it's crazy. And they're bolstering. What's scary is that the other side is fighting with the same tenacity to not change, which that's probably the scary part is that, like, you've got so many people that were in the middle or indifferent, and they're now mobilized in a positive way.
Yeah.
But then you've also got people that were indifferent that are now mobilized in what I believe to be the negative way. So I don't think it's regressing. I just think some people suck. And I actually don't know if that – I don't know when that changes, because, like, I had this stand-up bit that was like, I remember, basically, like, having this conversation, and it's a common one where it's like, can you believe that it's 2020 and this shit is still happening? Like, can you believe it? And part of me is like, yeah. I mean, let's just take a look at every year in the history of the world, and let's just think about what of those years humans were good to each other. None. Probably none. So to have the expectation that everything is going to be perfect is probably not fair, because I don't think we've ever been. But I do think, in the way that when we're kids, that we learn about the civil rights movement, and I always wondered if I would experience anything of that magnitude in terms of, like, a civil unrest.
Just did.
Here we are. Still are. Still here we are. And I think that's powerful, and I think that's cool, and I hope that continues for people, because that lesson that came out of the last time this happened was how me and half the country that is on the right side of this thing got it framed, and that information was able to move on generationally. So I'm glad that we're having a reset conversation right now, because we obviously needed to. Yeah. And that's the point, is Absolutely. Like, we obviously needed to have another conversation, because the civil rights movement of the 60s is not holding the same weight.
Starting to peter out a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're on the topic. How, like, I know how it is to be a black man with just wanting love and equality. How is it to be a white dude just wanting the same thing as me, because I believe that you and I are no different. You know, inside we're good people, and to me, that should be the measure of who you are. Your actions and stuff. So, but me being black, like, it's different than you being white. How do you feel about this whole, like, I don't really know
I'll say
how to
this.
ask that.
We talked about it. We talked a little bit about this earlier, and I think that this is kind of where this comes up, which is like a lot of white people, in my opinion, who are inclined to think about things in a way that you would agree with, don't have, like, you wake up and you grow up and you experience racism firsthand because of the color of your skin.
Absolutely.
So it's something that you actually can't escape dealing with.
Yeah.
And so me as a white person
from Western Mass,
where there isn't a large population in any sort of diverse sense, it's liberal and we're taught like liberal shit, but you're not even able, I wasn't even able to question the reality of it until my late teens, because like you're told this thing, and why not believe it's true? Because you literally have nothing. You have no community of people telling you this is a lie.
Yeah.
Social media isn't a thing yet, like when I'm a kid. So for me, it's like, I mean, and you and I talked about this too in terms of what we've been working on. What I think is my minor, and a lot of white people's feeling is, we are just getting the briefest glimpse of the kind of shit that you have had to deal with for your whole life.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it is overwhelming, because in some ways it does feel, I think, to some people like a crash course. Like all of a sudden it's like this new reality that you have to deal with. But I remember waking up, like I'm waking up feeling anxious, feeling scared, feeling sad. And I'm like, imagine this for 40 straight years, you know, like, and for me to say that I will ever understand that, I won't. And in a lot of ways, it just, for me as a white person, it really just comes down to learning how to actually be effective, learning how to actually have tough conversations with people, learning how to honestly eat a mistake if you're wrong. Like I think a lot of people are afraid to open up and have conversations about race because they're so afraid they're going to get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And the chance is you probably are. Like I am, and you are. And but the difference is you just have to be able to eat that. Like if you get it wrong, instead of getting defensive, if you get called out, you have to be like, facts. Okay, cool. You know, you got to be like, damn, okay, and I'm sorry, and I didn't realize that. And I think that no one's going to further scrutinize you if you say, oh, shit, you're right. They're only going to scrutinize you when you get defensive and you're like, but I've experienced this. And it's like, no, bro, like, you haven't. And for you to act like you think you have is a problem. So that's cool that you're there. I mean, it's funny. In the words of Spike Lee, it's as easy as do the right thing. Do the right thing. Great film.
Yeah, but, I mean, and it's super cliche, but that's really, if everybody 90% of the time were to just do the right thing in a situation, we'd be fine.
I guess the problem is, and what I'm kind of getting at with in terms of what we're able to see, is what your and I's obvious vision of doing the right thing is like, for some reason, not other people's. Okay. You know, like
if you're Christian, let's just throw this out.
Yeah.
Do the right.
Yeah.
The right Christian thing, because it's all the same right thing.
Totally.
Be kind.
Totally.
Don't be a jerk.
I know, what a sham that like people. I hate to like incite Christians into this because but
I'm
like,
just saying, like, that's the whole Christianity is about doing the right thing and being kind and helping thy neighbor and all that.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, I know. And then they just, well, dude, I mean, yeah, it's the fuck. But look at how corrupt it goes down to, like, the Constitution, which is like all men shall be created equal. It's like the motherfuckers wrote that shit with a slave in the room. Like they didn't mean it, you know. And that's, I think.
Oh, they meant it,
right?
But I'm not a man,
right?
Have you ever read You ever read the book? What was it? The Negro and the Mormon.
No. Worth a checkout.
Let's just say they're trying to take that one off the shelf.
A little bit of polygamy, a little bit of intrigue. What do we got?
mean, it's. But yeah, they pay money to people who have copies of this so they can burn them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That bad. Oh, that's good to know.
I've read like a little bit of it, and I was like, oh.
Wow.
It's fun.
For the viewers at home, we may have experienced a break screen for some amount of time.
Which is fine.
This is what happens, when you shoot with Stan as well. My setup is not, now that I'm in the editor position, I don't have to worry as much about my cameras and my stuff. So my gear is a little dated, and I'm sorry. But the conversation's there. But the video might have disappeared for a sec.
The video might just be little snippets. But that's all it needs. So where were we? We were speaking on
just the forbidden books, the forbidden texts, but mostly just about how it comes down to being a good person, and
that's it.
And I, but I think some people just really do get confused about what that looks like, and I also think people are hesitant to stick their neck out. But I think we're seeing strides. I think we're seeing strides in terms of people being more willing to stick their neck out, and I think, frankly, I just can't even imagine if this, if there was a silver lining to the coronavirus, it was the immense agitation among our entire population and the inability for us to sweep this under the rug again.
Yeah,
because this conversation that so needed and needs to continue to happen.
Yes.
Just wouldn't have started, and it's so fucked up because it really, even I even look back at some of the shit that I did right when all the shit was happening. I'm calling Salema and I'm just trying to and then you start to be like, what the fuck am I doing? But again, you have to just eat that was maybe awkward, and maybe that because it's laughable probably on your end where you're watching, I would imagine you were watching a bunch of white people have existential crises, which has got to be kind of funny to watch.
It felt good for a second.
I bet.
Now you don't even see, but at least you get to taste it.
Yeah.
This is every day for me.
Totally.
Well, I'm just glad that there are good people out there, and all you can do is hope that the good outweighs the evil in the end. Because
well, and here's the other thing: it's good comment, bad comment. I think about this a lot, because on the internet, or a Yelp, let's say, you're so much more likely to leave a comment when you don't like something.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, first, let's talk Snowboarder Mag. Snowboarder Mag puts up a post that says vote. It just says vote. It doesn't say who. It just says vote.
Yep.
And you get these fucking Trump psychos, for lack of a better word, just going off
fired
in the comments, and there's a part of me that's looking at this being like, holy crap, how Republican is snowboarding, But then there's also this part of me that's like, well, how many of us saw this post, said, yup, that's cool, vote post, gonna vote, and just scroll by it and don't feel the need to comment. So sometimes I can't tell if I'm hyper worried about the other side because they're so vocal, and sometimes I think we should just be more vocal. And that's why I've made the mistake, unfortunately, of trying to open up conversation to a lot of people. I'll post some shit. I posted some shit the other day about how Black Lives Matter has to account for all the looters, but the NRA doesn't have to account for school shooters.
I saw that. That was beautiful.
Yep. And I've got just people in my DMs
what do you mean?
Yeah, or just telling me hey, keep politics out of snowboarding, which I'm laughing out loud. I'm like, this, first of all, this is my personal Instagram account. I care about things beyond snowboarding, believe it or not. I get that you want me to be funny snowboard guy, but it's, I'm bigger than that. And if you know me, it's bigger than that. And then I don't know if it's a mistake, but I welcomed I said, let's talk. Let's hash it out. And 9 out of 10 times you don't get anywhere. And that's the hard part. Because I want to believe that I'm a debater at heart. Ask anyone who tries to date me. It's probably miserable because I will debate the shit out of you on anything. So I think
I want to catch up. Well, don't you think that
sriracha
has the same essential
nonstop. I've been referred to as kind of like a Larry David type, like always kind of finding the problem in things. You know, I walk out, what bothers me? This. Yeah, I'm trying to prove my point a lot. So I don't know. I'm often stepping up to the plate trying to have those arguments. But it's tiring for sure. Because the reason it's tiring is that so many people that are having this conversation, are citing like minor occurrences, like maybe one article that says like one member of the Black Lives Matter movement said they should loot. And I'm like, okay, we can talk for a second about how like they have been, like how they actually do, I think, have the right to like want to loot because their culture and like whole shit has been looted by people forever. And at a certain point you do have to turn. Second of all, though, like one person doing something doesn't mean that like the entire movement agrees with looting. So like, but then they just shove that shit right back in your face because they're like, well, obviously the NRA doesn't support school shooters. And I'm like, the difference is this. What it shows is, why is it that a organization that happens to be, in this case doesn't happen to be, but is run by black members of the community, why is it that those people are dealt with so much scrutiny on every level, and the NRA, which is like a white person's organization, doesn't seem like it has to go through as many hoops? I can't imagine how that is not a suggester that the country is racist. So
this is a country we're talking about that was built by slaves.
Free labor. Yeah. Capitalism in general.
So,
which is another scary thing, and I get pissed off about that when people are talking about like how capitalism, like this whole anti-socialist communist thing that like the right loves to hang on to.
But who's funding all of their stuff? The communists.
I mean, yeah, you could argue that for sure. You could. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. And I can't, like, I have a hard time knowing if this is something that like everyone grows up and goes through, like I think it's amplified right now, but I got to imagine, my parents' generation, you deal with differences of opinion. It does seem more dire than ever before, though. Yeah. It does seem more dire. So I can't tell. I don't know. I don't know. I think the key is being open to acknowledging that you were wrong. And I am ready to acknowledge that I could be wrong to anyone if they can show me that. And I think a big problem from what I see of what I would categorize as the other side, quote unquote, is that there isn't even an ability for them to say, yeah, we could be wrong. And that's what makes me think that we're the reasonable ones and they're not. Because I'm like, at least I think most of the people I know are reasonable enough to be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I am wrong. Whereas I just don't get that impression from the other side. And if so, I don't know. I'm rambling now.
That's good. It's okay. I'm with you. It seems it's tough time, and we need just to like step back, take a breath, and come to some sort of conclusion, which will definitely have continual talks and more work. But we're only as strong as our weakest link, and right now we're not very strong, bud.
No, we're not. Which is also, it's such an interesting thing, to watch in America and just to grow up hearing about America being like the best, and how ingrained that is. I wonder, like, if does that happen in other countries? Like, are they sitting in Lithuania and they're like, and by the way, Lithuania is the best. Like, because maybe that's like not a problem isolated to the U.S. Like, and I got to imagine like a lot of countries with national pride kind of raise their it's beneficial to raise your kids in a country to think your country's the best. I think. Yep. But talk about we're just like kind of in our terrible two stage. I think we've got a lot to figure out, and I think Imagine I just imagine there's been a lot of turmoil in Europe all over through the years that have crafted those people to be the people that they are today. Yeah. And I do hope that in these preliminary conversations, we can still remain the free world leader, but be moving in the right direction because I don't know. If not us, then who, really?
I don't know. I think, I don't know if we're the free world leader anymore.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I don't either.
I think that job's up for...
yeah, Iceland might have that now. I don't... yeah. I don't
crazy.
know. Yeah.
Well, Stan, I think we did it, bud. We made it all the way through.
We did something.
We had serious talk. We had funny talk. We had some history because you're a historian.
I try. I'm a budding historian.
You have a nugget for your father? I did my first backside 360.
I know.
On a chair accessible mountain.
He's going to lose it when he hears that. No, I'm actually... I hope we can ride Butternut one day.
Yeah.
That would be huge. I thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I was actually shocked that I was so quick on your list. Or maybe it's just convenient because you're here.
But I mean, you're always on this side.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I wanted to put you on that side.
I appreciate it. I mean, you're good on both sides. So
thank you,
Russ. This has been great.
It's fun. All right, Stan.
All right.
Just keep your head up, bud.
You too.
And stay cynical.
I will. Don't worry. I don't know any other way.
All right, man.
All right.
Yes, that was chatting.
That was great.
It's just chatting.